As a woman of color, I have always received messages about the proper ways to express my sexuality to avoid hypersexualization and other criticisms. As early as elementary school, I was given strictly defined sexual boundaries. The fear of being labeled negatively made me police my own behavior. Through our discussion of Victorian women in asylums, I learned that the policing of women's sexuality is not just a contemporary issue. During this time, male psychiatrists worked to cure female insanity through reducing their uncontrolled sexuality. There was no place for female sexual desire within the Victorian respectability model. This model insisted that women were only allowed to occupy the boundaries of, as Showalter states, the ladylike values of silence, decorum, taste, service, piety, and gratitude. One of the ways that psychiatrists exercised their control was through manipulating the female reproductive system. It was a widely held belief that menstruation was not only linked to sexual maturation, but also to wild, deviant sexual behavior. A woman during menstruation was said to be vicious and destructive, a prisoner to her reproductive cycle. To prevent these sexually charged symptoms, doctors forced patients to take cold showers, wear certain kinds of underwear, and remove meat from their diets. These various treatments were said to delay the start of menstruation. In addition to controlling sexuality in this way, male doctors also performed surgical procedures on female bodies. Dr. Isaac Baker Brown's clitoridectomy and labia removal were the most common and effective. From 1859 to 1866, Dr. Brown performed these procedures. These two methods, as Showalter puts it, were the surgical enforcement of an ideology that restricts female sexuality to reproduction. The clitoris is the only organ that is entirely dedicated to sexual pleasure. This little bundle of nerves grants autonomous sexual satisfaction. Because of this, doctors linked it and masturbation to madness and uncontrolled behavior. By removing the clitoris, Dr. Brown believed that female patients would have more governance over themselves. The emphasis on controlling female sexuality was not only evident in the treatment that women received, but also in their diagnoses. In the mid to late 1800s, a new diagnosis began to emerge: nymphomania. It is a mental disorder characterized by uncontrollable and excessive sexual desire in women. With this new medical label, male psychiatrists furthered their crusade against female sexuality by asserting that the presence of female desire is something that is deviant and evidence of a sickness. This diagnosis is readily accepted because it aligned with Victorian ideals of ladylike feminine behavior. Anything less than this standard clearly communicated insanity. Like the messages I was given as a child on how to properly display my sexuality, Victorian women were also forced into strict categories of behavior. Similarly to my fear of being hypersexualized or viewed in a negative way, when these women went beyond the limits set for them, they were labeled insane. As patients, these women were subjected to invasive treatments in order to curb their sexual desires. Once their uncontrolled sexuality was ultimately erased and controlled, male psychiatrists believed that these women were cured.